Hi everybody, my name is John Dagdalen. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about how to get more data from the materials project than the 100 or so results that show up on the search pages that you just saw. And the way you do that is through our API. And API just stands for Application Programming Interface. So it's your interface with our tools and database that are all running in the cloud. So the first step is to get an API key. And this is associated with your materials project account. And so the way you get this is you go up into the top right corner on the materials project homepage to this dashboard button, and you click that. And then you're going to click this button here that says Generate API Key. And it should give you this string of characters. And this is just a key that allows us to know who is trying to access the database when, how fast they're doing it, and it allows us to make sure that you're accessing the data in a way that's not going to jeopardize the performance and everything like that of the server. So basically, it just allows you to have access to our data. So you'll have complete open access with this key. So once you have this, I'm going to ask you to open a new tab and go to matgen 5, matgen 5.lbl.gov. And let me log out so that this is the view you're going to see. So we've asked you to all create a GitHub account ahead of time. If you've already done this, then you can follow along. If you haven't yet, then you can do this maybe during the coffee break or between the sessions. And then you can follow along on the GitHub page that Donnie showed you. So you're going to sign in with GitHub, type in your user credentials, and then you should be able to access this menu right here. So this is the Jupyter Hub that we'll introduce a little bit more in the next session. But it's a server interface that you can basically run Python in the cloud, and all of the software is already pre-installed in there for you, so you can just get off to the races. And then I'm going to have you go to the mappy folder in this main menu. So if you've got to this point, can you put a green sticky up so I make sure that everybody's ready to go? All right. OK, so it seems like everybody's here. And then if you have a problem, put a red sticky up, and somebody will come help you right away. And so you should see some notebooks here. So there's some notebooks from last year, but the ones we're going to be using are these first two here, API use filled and API use empty. So go ahead and open the API use empty notebook by clicking on it. And then you should see something like this. So if you're not at this point yet, put a red sticky, but if you're able to access this notebook, then keep your green sticky up. So this is our notebook interface. And I'm going to activate what's called slide mode here. Just this makes it a little bit more visible, but you don't have to do this. So this is kind of a preview of what we're going to do during the API section later this afternoon. But we wanted to get you set up with one object that you'll be using in the Pymatgen session so that you're sort of familiar with that before you see it for the first time. So we've already got our API key. And there's going to be a cell at the top of that notebook that looks like this. You see this little exclamation mark, PMGconfig, -- add, and then in all caps, PMG mappy key. And then what I want you to do is go back to the materials project dashboard that you just were at, copy this key. I'm hitting Control-C, and I'm highlighting everything inside these angular brackets here. I'm deleting it, and then I'm pasting my key here. And then to run this cell, so to run the code inside this cell, I'm holding Shift, and then I'm going to hit Enter or Return. And so what this has done is it's saved that API key in a configuration file so that you don't have to paste it into the code every time you want to use the API in Python. So our API is you've seen one way of accessing it through what's going on behind the scenes in the website through just an HTTP internet request. So you can do this by, if you want to try this in your browser, I encourage you. You can copy this text. So what you see here is at thematerialsproject.org, there's some sort of URL that allows you to access our REST API, and it's the second version. And maybe we wanted to get a material, and so that endpoint is the materials endpoint. And say we wanted to get material MP1234, and we wanted the VASP calculation details of that page. And then we have a question mark here. So that is just saying, I'm going to give you a parameter that you may need to authenticate me on the API. And that parameter is the API key. And it's equal to, and then just paste your API key here. And then you can paste this in the browser, and you should get what the server responds to with this request with. So if I try this, I'm going to do it just real quick. You don't necessarily have to do this, but you see you get some text back. So this is a document that contains all of the basic calculation details that build up a materials detail page. So if you wanted to get 100,000 of these for all the materials in the materials project, you could do that through this, but it would take you a pretty long time to change the MP ID and the URL each time. But luckily, so we can do that with programming languages like Python. So in Python, you can use what we have. We've written a wrapper for it called the MP rester. So we're going to go through making regular requests in Python in the API section, but let's just skip to the rester. So the rester connects to our database through our REST API. And it has a lot of these functions built into it that make it very easy to pull data out of the database. So you'll be doing this in the next section to get some structures and then manipulate them and things like that. So the rester also has documentation that if you ever come to have trouble, you should always consult this one for the rester. And then we also have separate documentation for the API. I'll go over both of these in the API section. But let's start up an instance of the MP rester. So in the cell below this section, and just this blank cell, let's import the MP rester from Pymatgen. So from Pymatgen, import MP rester. And I'm not holding Shift to enter yet. I'm just hitting Enter to create a new line. And so let's create an instance of our rester. So let's say mpr equals mp rester, and then a set of parentheses. So if I run this cell by holding Shift Enter, now there should be something called mpr in the namespace. And so if I click below that line and I just ask mpr period, and then I push tab, the autocomplete menu in Jupyter is going to pop up, and it's going to show you the different properties and methods associated with this object. So you can see here that there's tons of functionality to this MP rester. So one might be get materials IDs. So let's try this. So you saw an example earlier of this interesting silicon dioxide polymorph. So maybe let's get all the MP IDs for every silicon dioxide in the materials project. So I'm going to create a set of quotation marks. So this is creating a string. And let's write SiO2. So this is the formula we're interested in getting materials IDs for. And then just run this cell holding Shift Enter. And we can see that our code has output a list of materials IDs for all the SiO2 compounds in the materials project database. If I want to see the length of this, I'll do print len for length, len. And I'm going to close the rest of my parentheses. And so now we can see we have 296 different SiO2 compounds in the materials project database. One thing to note, we recommend that you use the with context manager in Python when you use the MP rester. So it'll keep your connection more stable and make sure you get the data that you need. And it'll clean things up when you're not using it anymore. So the way you do this is you say with MP rester the object, and I'm going to create an instance of that with the parentheses as MPR, and I'm going to put a colon and hit enter, and it already the enter already puts a tab in front, so it auto-completes the white space for you. And then let's do the same thing we just did. Let's do MPR dot and hit tab. And you'll see that you don't actually get that autocomplete yet because this line has not run yet. So we'll use the function that we had used before. So get materials IDs SIO2. Maybe I... Oh, okay, so I was just missing a D here, materials IDs. So when I type this, you notice that I didn't have a print statement the first time we did this. So in Jupyter, when you have the cell execute something, if it's a simple thing in that cell, it'll print out whatever that thing is, but it's not always going to print. So if you ever want to see something in a cell with more than that single line or something like that, you should always put print in front of it. And now when we run this, we should get the same result that we just got in the last cell. So everything that happens inside this code is going to be using this MPR MP-rester. And then when we exit this indent by hitting enter and then deleting the tab, now we're out of that context. And so we can keep using the things we created. So maybe if I wanted to name this list to be something and then use that later, you can. But it's just a cleaner way of doing it that helps out with some stuff. So be aware of that. So we used just then one of the MP-rester methods. But there's another method that maybe you want to try out is get band structure by material ID. So we have here a little cell with some code that says don't edit this code. This is just a function to help plot the band structure in a cleaner way. So make sure you run this cell though. So click in the cell and hit Shift Enter. And then a number should pop up to the left saying that the cell has run. And now I want you to do an exercise to solidify that what we've learned about using the methods of the MP-rester. And I want you to use the get band structure by material ID method of the MP-rester to get a band structure and just put that inside of plot band structure. So take your stickies off. If you're having any trouble, like you're not at the level we're at, put a red sticky up. And then once you've completed the exercise, put a green sticky up. And then I will show the solution. So the first step is going to be to use the context manager with MP-rester, parentheses, as MPR. And maybe I'll say BS is equal to MPR dot get band structure by material ID. And then I'm going to pass a string to it. And let's say we'll get MP-1234. I'm hitting enter to make a new line. And then I'm just going to plot this band structure with plot band structure BS. And then I'm going to run this cell with Shift Enter. And then looks like in this mode it's not visible, but here we go. Then you should get something that looks like this. So these are the band structures that you've seen on the materials detail pages. So this has just been a quick introduction to the MP-rester. It's going to be very useful going forward in the MP workshop. And you're going to be using it during the Pymatgen session to get structures and start manipulating stuff. So you'll get right off to the races getting data. And then later this afternoon, I'm going to show you how to, a little bit more about how the API is structured and how to get lots of data from it, and then do a materials design task. So I think you're briefly introduced to finding materials with negative Poisson's ratios. So we'll walk through that workflow the same way that we did to discover some novel oxidic materials. We'll walk through that materials informatics pipeline on how you might do this for any type of material you're interested in. So thank you very much. I'm going to yield the stage to, is it a coffee break now? Or is it next session? Sure. Okay. So do you want to show that link right here?
Sure.
Yeah. So is it just the polnev dot?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna have a coffee break quickly, but before we leave, we'd like you to fill out a quick survey on the beginning of the content and what we can do to improve, and what you liked best about the session so far. We really take your feedback into account. It's the most important thing to make this workshop successful, and each year we get better because we get feedback from our users. So we'd really love for you to fill out this survey. All right, and I can answer any questions too if you all have any. Thank you very much.